I'd like to introduce on the live stage, we have Micah Lande, a PhD and Assistant Professor and E.R. Stensaas Chair for Engineering Education at South Dakota Mines. Dr. Lande teaches human-centered engineering, design thinking, and design innovation courses. Dr. Lande researches how technical and non-technical people learn and apply design thinking and making processes in their work. And he's going to be talking about majoring in making in college. If we could have a round of applause.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Micah. I'm a maker. I get excited at things like this. Makers do engineering. And I teach mechanical engineering at a university. My mechanical engineering students aren't always inclined to make stuff. So yeah, there's my smiling face. I'm at the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, which is in South Dakota, in the shadow of Mount Rushmore. I grew up in the Bay Area, and this is a wonderful excuse to come back and visit. I see this around everywhere. We're all makers, right, as people. We're inclined to interact with the world and build and create things. Here's my son, Bobby. He's now 11, right? But this is him when he's 7, being very excited about using the cordless drill, right? And we're like, sure, use that, but do it outside, don't make a mess, right? And so here he is inside in the air-conditioned building, drilling a hole all the way to China out of a block of wood, and it's outside, right? I just love this as, I mean, of course, he's being safe and has safety glasses, right? But look at the joy on his face about making. It's an inherently human endeavor. And then there's also a bit of practical ingenuity about how he's taking advantage of air conditioning and making a mess outside as we asked him to do. So he's in a Montessori school, and there's some tenets of Montessori education that I find to be a useful jumping off point to talking about making and educating college students. So they start with concrete materials and then abstract symbols and make that connection. In my own education, it always started with the abstract and then went to the concrete. And so it's an interesting thing about how we all learn, right? Here's Kolb's experiential learning cycle. Not that vital, although it oscillates between concrete things and abstract things. You observe and things, you interact and experiment with them, right? And to me, this is some foundation of what I like to just simply call majoring in making, right? And so as a teacher, I instruct burgeoning new mechanical engineering students, and I feel like I am helping them become engineers and then also become engineers that like to make stuff, right? And so here are a couple of my students. This is Trinity, who's a student who runs the makerspace in our library. Here's Madison, very proud to be the safety officer for our foundry and welding shop. Here's Russell, who is a upperclassman manufacturing mentor who helps us scale up how our students learn how to use the machine shop. A couple years ago, Make came out with a list of best maker schools. I think it was an expansive list of a couple hundred schools, one from 2021 and one from 2022. I think it's fair to say that makers do engineering whether they call it that or not, right? Some of you older folks in the audience might recognize Richard Dean Anderson as MacGyver, right, before the reboot. And so this is what we want out of our engineering students, to have some practical ingenuity. As I understand, MacGyver, the fictional character, was not an engineering student. He majored in physics and chemistry. To me, that's quite surprising. But it's a lot of fun to lean in our students, to have them imagine things and build things that are kind of neat. So I had a group of seniors who made a street writing graffiti robot, right? It could take some vector images and a can of non-permanent chalk spray paint and put those images on the ground. Maybe on the introductory level, I had students who practicing vector addition by building miniature golf holes and playing those in the middle of a hallway. There's a little bit of making in all of that. we've done some research to look at the educational pathways of makers, a bunch of people involved. We've gone off to maker fairs and interviewed people, right? There's some things, characteristics that are around making that would make for a successful maker in college, whether that's engineering, art, design, anything in between. So practical ingenuity, right? Playful invention, I think playing with ideas, playing with materials, super important, super useful. There's some bit of a sharing ethos, right? And so if I get super excited about something, I want to share that with other people to get them excited about it. There's also a bit of self-directed learning, right? Some mission orientation of I want to make a Volvo laden with singing Billy Bass fish. What might I make that work, right? And so the thing that gets me excited about making is the notion of it being a community-based thing, right? This culture of additive innovation. I'm going to make something. I'm going to be inspired by what other people have made. I'm going to make that thing, maybe hack at it, improve it, share it back to the community. There's also a bit of what I lean in on tinkering and hacking and making, right? And so, again, MacGyver as like a jumping off point of a cultural touchstone, but that we build by trying things out, right? And so here's something from the New York Times about tinkering as a pedagogy. There's great historical examples of things that have been hacked together. There's a transistor, there's a credit card, right? Eddie Van Halen's Frankenstrat, a computer mouse, first Palm Pilot. Here's initial prototype of a super soaker with 2-liter soda bottles, right? These are all reflect practical ingenuity, right? That tinkering and making and creating, that all kind of leans into expressing a part of our own soul and connecting with ourselves and with each other. And so I think about as making as tinkering with technology, right? We want to build stuff that helps explore, learn, solve problems that one cares about. And so I like to encourage my students to think broadly and prototype the future, imagine the future, act on what matters, right? And it might be that we're talking about imagining and making. It might be that we use some more specialized language like designing and engineering. And so I think back of my own childhood, Back to the Future 2, most important movie of my childhood that came out in 1987, right? There was, if you remember the DeLorean, it would travel through time, right? They needed to get back to the future, right? And they rigged up something to be able to harness the power of lightning and the clock tower, right? And get fast enough where they're going 88 miles an hour to travel through time, right? So a hallmark of my childhood, I'll just show you a quick example of some of my students who replicated at least the trail of Faire hacking some things together. And there's examples of this to me that are really encouraging and inspiring of students taking technology and taking it beyond what I might ask them to do in the classroom, but taking their own interest and playing with ideas and getting inspired. So I think this plays a little bit of a video of a DeLorean slowly going down the road and then laying a trail of fire behind it. So they're using some microcontrollers, a windshield wiper system, some isopropyl alcohol, barbecue lighters, some LED lights, right? These are all the things that you would need to make this happen. I think it's a wonderful example of students taking what they're learning and their interest in getting their hands dirty, right? And that's all about getting their hands dirty, building to think, thinking to build. There's all sorts of ways in which we have fun in the classroom and challenge students to imagine and build things that they wouldn't have thought possible. So another example I'll show is a project we have. Students make human-powered vehicles out of cardboard, right? So they're bicycles, 2 wheels, there might be dollies or 4 wheels, right? And so they start off with not having any wits about them about how they might use cardboard as a building material, and then quickly try things out and come up to speed, right? And so here's a little bit of a video of having them race around, right? Some of them do it successfully. We put them in safety equipment, right? So it's a little bit less dangerous. But there's a little bit of fun. And so the dictionary definition of an engineer, right? I love the third one, person who runs a train. That might be my Halloween costume. But it's someone who with scientific training who designs and builds complicated systems, right? And so to me, that's what we might take an interest in making in K-12 or hobbies that adults might have, and build on that to inspire people to make engineers. And so there's a couple other things, and then I'll wrap up. I think there's a lot of value in what we're all here celebrating at Maker Faire to create in context, right? And that might be also how we might learn in context. And so that notion of having some problem that you actually care about to solve and engage in, right? And having the time and the resources and the support to make things make for a much more robust, holistic learning experience. And so I get excited when my students express some interest in not just what can they do, but what should they do, right? So applying some care and interest to the world that they live in. There's a little bit to me of that is romantic, particularly in this day and age of being a citizen and trying to improve the world and doing that by building stuff. And so the idea of that this endeavor of making is something that we all do, and as citizens of the world, we could all make the world better. To me, is useful. So, building to think, learning by design, right? There's some bit of when we talk about what the engineer of the future might be, and some of this is from reports from the National Academy of Engineering. A number of things about the engineer of 2020. Some of them that I'll call out that to me are specifically echo what we can think about when we think about engineers. The idea of practical ingenuity, right? This is MacGyver trying to solve a problem with the stuff that he has. Creativity, right? There's a lot of value of creativity and a lot of ways to inspire and extend creativity past a foundation of math and science. And then lifelong learning, right? And so I thought this talk was useful. Just there's some examples of schools and universities that are here showing off the cool stuff that their students make, right? Berkeley has a whole wealth of things to check out. But the idea that it's part of a lifelong learning spectrum, right? So you could be a kid inspired by making, an adult inspired by making. So some of the things I mentioned: creative confidence, playful invention, self-directed learning, that maps to this bit of creativity, practical ingenuity, and lifelong learning. K-12 has 21st century skills. There's a mapping there to creativity and innovation, critical thinking and problem solving, and initiative and self-direction. ABET, which accredits many engineering programs, they have some things that don't necessarily map, but some that do, right? So there's an opportunity for creative confidence to maybe be added to what we expect out of our new engineers, but playful invention being how to identify, formulate, and solve engineering problems, self-directed learning mapping to lifelong learning, and strategic thinking. And so I get inspired by walking around and seeing what people do. There's certainly a making mindset that is probably no different than a prototyping mindset of being inclined to build stuff, right? And part of that is having an engineering mindset. I like walking up and down the hardware store and just seeing what's there, right? Some bit of a design thinking mindset of what types of problems are we interested in solving, how we might use empathy and rapid prototyping to echo some of these things, but really a doing mindset. So we're all makers, we're all making engineers, right? Makers exhibit qualities of future engineers, right? This might be some way in which we broaden engineering pathways and how we might include a broader swath of people who become engineering students. My high school guidance counselor told me I was good at math and science, so I should be an engineer, right? But engineering is a team sport. I wish my soccer coach told me, you're good at collaborating with other people on the soccer field, you should be an engineer. And I think I started with this. Makers do engineering. Engineering students don't necessarily make. The idea of collaborative, community-based additive innovation. Some of this is reflected in the classroom in PBL. We could problem-based learning, project-based learning, product-based learning. And I guess the takeaway is majoring in making, find some place that you get to do hands-on stuff, whether it's studio art or mechanical engineering or anything in between. And so as you might look at people in your life going off to college and how making might connect with that, these are a couple things that I think are jumping off points. It might be a bit of a description of maker-based pedagogy, that these characteristics of making can appear and should appear in the classroom. And so we're all making engineers, build by invention, learning by design, right? So we're making engineers, prototyping engineers, designing engineers, and the like. So I'll stop there. My time is up. I'm happy to field a couple of questions if there are some. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Micah. If we can get a round of applause for Micah. And if you have any questions, raise your hand, and I'll come and give you the mic, and you can ask your question. All right.
I have a question related to the transition from maker to engineer. Among your students, what typical projects they engage in? Is it electronics? Is it mechanical design? Is it Lego type design, raw materials? What the typical student does?
Sure. Well, so I'm in South Dakota. The typical student is someone who comes from a farm, right, and has some maybe common sense and practical ingenuity about fixing their tractor, right? If you know I teach mechanical engineers, and some of them geek out about being shop rats and machining stuff in the shop, right? For some of them, new technology, 3D printing is super exciting, right? I think more and more, different than when I was a student like 30 years ago, our mechanical engineering students are learning how to program and how to do circuits and building robots of all sorts. We also have a fair bit of students who geek out and find an engineering competition team where they build a Formula race car or a dune buggy, right? I think the answer to your question is it's all of those things, right? I feel like when I was an undergraduate student, mechanical engineering was such a narrow thing, even though mechanical engineering is such a broad thing. I like to think that we bring students up to speed to be able to do some of these things in the classroom. I teach a sophomore design course where our mechanical engineering students use Arduinos as a prototyping platform, but they do all sorts of things maybe more exciting outside of the classroom. And I don't know, more and more there's maker spaces that are not just for the engineering students, but for all students that we have on campus. I wish that I was a student now, rather than being ossified and being all the things that I did when I was an undergrad, right? Such an opportunity to be a maker in college. Thank you for the question.
We have another question in the back.
For educators that are elementary, intermediate, high school, are there any particularly good books, YouTube channels, just sources of actual projects to do that are age appropriate?
Sure, totally. So I have an 11-year-old at home, like he does Minecraft and builds amazing things in Minecraft, right? he uses Tinkercad to build rockets, and whatever he builds is a rocket because he writes NASA on the side of it, right? I think there's any number of science museums are a place to start. Like the Exploratorium has a tinkering studio that's fantastic, and they publish cookbooks of some of the activities that they do there. I mean, I think there's plenty of examples of cool stuff that students are able to do even in elementary school throughout the fair here. I think some bit of it to me is like wanting to lean in on the creativity and the invention education part of it. Like, what is a problem that you see in your neighborhood that you want to solve? And then the technology to make that happen maybe is secondary, right? If you're inspired by a problem that you care about, you as a young person, as an individual, can be driven a little bit more as a self-directed learner, right? That being said, I love cardboard, and it seems like everybody can make something with cardboard. Cardboard is ubiquitous, right? There's a tabletop device that I just was playing with this morning that helps cut cardboard very easily and very safely, even for small hands, right? So I think lots of things to be inspired by, but I think that the starting point is like, what problem do you care about? How do you want to make the world better? And for young people, that might be their town, their school, their neighborhood as a starting point. Thank you.
I love that. We still got plenty of time for questions, so just raise your hand if you have one.
Hi, Micah. Thanks for your talk. Enjoyed it. I want to hear a little bit more about the different maker spaces on campus that you have. It sounds like some of them are in departments and some of them
Sure.
are public. And then a little bit about the students that are using the different spaces and how they're using them. If the public ones are more used
Right.
for personal projects or class projects.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the question. So it runs the whole spectrum of what we have on campus, right? So I think our library has a makerspace that, because it's a library, it's open to everybody, right? And so, I mean, we have some 3D printers and some laser cutters. I mean, I think it's all the stuff that you could safely use without any like eye protection, right? And a lot of that are students doing personal projects, right? So what holiday is coming up, right? And that usually reflects what is going on in the makerspace. So I think there's a couple students who are 3D printing lightsabers to go along with their Star Wars costumes, right? And then across campus, there's spaces that belong to different departments. So we have a machine shop and a wood shop and a welding space, right? And our students, as first-year students, learn how to use those things safely. They use them for class projects, but they also use them for personal projects or extracurricular activities. We're an undergraduate STEM-focused school, but we do have some art maker spaces, and those like fabric arts or ceramics and pottery. And some of that is connected to like material science, but a lot of it is the people who come in and use the space regularly have figured out how to hack the space so that they can make stuff that they want to do, right? There's also some students who have side hustles of like design, like building out fishing lures and selling those on the side at some scale. Yeah.
I just wanted to know, are the ones that are in specific departments, are they still open to other students, or do you have to be in that department to use that space?
The question was, do you have to be in the department to use that makerspace?
So most of them are open to students, right? It's like come in and get trained up so that you could use these tools safely, right? I mean, I think that there's a little bit of attention for some tools that these are research tools versus like stuff for our undergraduate students to use, right? Thank you.
Got a couple more minutes if there's any more questions. Last call.
Oh, in the front. All right.
Great talk. I like what you said about making as a team sport. Can you explain the types of like team members a maker should be looking out for?
Oh, sure. So, I mean, some bit of it is making as doing it together, right, rather than doing it yourself. I mean, I find my students like to geek out on building stuff, on doing stuff, right? So they have some affinity groups that they get together and do stuff with. I mean, we make them do a lot of things in groups, in project courses, and we spend some bit of time talking about what it's like to be in a group and a well-performing group. So, I mean, it's a little bit weird, though. In most of the situations, they're all the same, right? They're all the same major, they're all the same age, they're in the same class. We do have some extracurricular things that are vertically integrated, so student projects that are led by juniors or seniors, and then there's freshmen who come in and get involved as apprentices, and then get, you know, peer and near peer learning, right? I think there's enough things that go on at our university that are team-based that it's like a ubiquitous thing, and students learn who is responsible, who shows up, right? Who flakes. It's like probably any of us. Who are the people that you want to spend time with, and then you figure out how to work with those people in class and outside of class. But I don't know. We have, all my coworkers I say are 18 to 22, and then I'm surprised that I am not that age anymore, right? Like, I'm old enough to be their parents, but it's something that I think is a really interesting developmental time of, like, what does it mean to be personally accountable? Like, students have achieved a lot to get to college, and they're used to doing things as an individual, right? What does that mean to rely on other people and become a robust team? It's also, there's plenty of wonderful learning experiences when you have bad team experiences, right? I try to remind my students about that, and it doesn't make them feel any better. Thank you.
We've got time for one more question if anyone has one. Well, then let's give another round of applause for Micah, please.
All right. Thank you.